No zombies, thank you.
Zombies.
Yeah, not a fan.
Zombies.
Do you, Dennis, do you have an Xbox?
Yeah.
Did you play, what is it, I Made a Game with Zombies in it?
Which?
It's called I Made a Game with Zombies
No.
in it. It's a twin stick shooter, it's like $1.
It's good?
Yeah, it runs about 20 minutes until the soundtrack runs out, and it is fantastic.
Is it a side scroller?
It's a top-down twin stick shooter.
Got it.
You just stay there and you kind of shoot everything. It gets harder the more people you have.
Is it like Smash TV kind of?
I think I played Smash movies.
I'm gonna not cool movies. I'm gonna have you like fly around the ISS, and then I'm gonna talk about some point cloud data and having people be able to play games and solve problems.
So who's gonna play the role of mission ground? Mission control.
Mission control.
Yes.
Missions like
You'll fly around.
There we go. So,
I came in earlier and there was no one in here.
Everybody just, all we want to do is play games.
I don't know where the other was.
Am I mistaken or am I not the right size for these chairs?
I don't think anybody is.
Right,
I
these
am.
chairs. These probably she's right. It's just like these chairs feel a little bit smaller than.
At my school, they have like these chairs. They're different.
And said the quality of education at GW. The school chairs.
Not non-matching school chairs, although most of them in there are the same. Most of
This
them.
one doesn't match. The other one goes like that.
Oh, but you have the cool reclining one.
Those things are awesome.
Oh yeah.
Pretty amazing.
What? Break again?
Any word from what happened on the mall today? Like, was it a really big deal on the
Started
mall?
at 10.
It's probably still going.
What happened?
They probably got lost. Or they went to the Capitol building.
So Sarah Palin and Glenn Beck basically like had a big party out there. Is that? I mean,
It was supposedly a non-political rally. I don't know how that's possible.
Or they call it a non-political rally.
Yeah, it was restoring honor or something. I don't know.
Are you on Wi-Fi or on 3G here?
I keep getting booted off of Wi-Fi, so I keep reconnecting.
Okay, so
Wi-Fi
it just says
works.
that it's like iPhone, iPod Touch is not supported
The Wi-Fi?
on the G Wireless.
Oh no, you want GW event.
GW event.
Okay.
Yeah, in the past username is SpaceUp DC, password is SpaceUp DC.
That's right, but for whatever reason, it doesn't want to cooperate with it.
Here we go.
I'm gonna have to take a pen and paper and write all these names down on this picture. I think I can go to a G. Oh, analog.
Okay.
I had the worst trouble actually sending texts today.
So the first thing I'm going to show you guys is the system I started working on about 5.5 years
by
ago.
the way, they turned on the projector. We did do that actually.
Okay, I don't really need it.
The screen and everything is pretty good.
Is there
Yeah.
things I probably needed adapter to make it work?
Yeah, you just need to plug in here.
Yeah, I don't have that guy on my okay.
Okay.
But I'll turn it around so you guys can actually come up and mess with it. So about 5.5 years ago, 6.5 years ago, I went to work for a company to do their website. And really, what I was going to do is just graphic design and just mess with their website and update it. And there seemed to be other cutting-edge technology that the company that I worked for was doing research and development for, and one of them was games. So the CEO of the company said, okay, how long do you think it would take you to develop the vehicle assembly building in Kennedy Space Center and have somebody be able to walk around in it? And I said, well, it's going to be kind of tough because we'll need a room and all this kind of stuff, and the space shuttle, probably 3 months. And he goes, all right, that's great. You've got 3 weeks to do it. And I said, all right. So the design team at that point got together and we started looking at video games and how to modify video games rapidly and get content into those games, basically creating what the community at that point was still calling game mods and game enhancements. So what we did, we went to ESMD in Florida, and ESMD is for lack of a better word, a division at NASA, right? So ESMD was working on the Constellation system, And what they needed was a solution of how to visualize what they were creating. So they wanted to see the lunar surface, they wanted to see Mars, they wanted to see the International Space Station, they wanted to see a launch from Earth all the way out into outer space. And they wanted the engineers to be able to log into a system and say, oh, okay, we're gonna have a conversation and then fly around it. So what I'm gonna show you guys is our version of the International Space Station in this system. They had kind of shopped the idea around to other places and other parts of the organization, and what they had gotten back was a quote that was like, okay, yeah, we can build it for 20 million and it'll take 5 years. And we looked at it and we said, you know what, it shouldn't take that long. We shouldn't have to build it from scratch. If there's stuff the kids are already learning and modding on their own, if a 12-year-old can build their middle school inside of Doom or inside of Quake in a matter of a month, we should be able to do the same kind of thing with the International Space Station and with the lunar surface. All we need is data, and we need to convert that data into game assets. So what we did is we gutted all the game portions of the system, and we plugged in all this data that NASA was giving us, and we got it to work. And we came back to them, after we had, we had done some demos, and we said, we think we can do this thing. We can do the first tech demo for a couple $100,000, a few $100,000 just to try it. And they saw what it was capable of. We had the whole system solved in about 18 months, and it cost, I think, $1.2 million to make. And that is not a lot of money. When you're talking about NASA and you're talking about what you're able to develop and how quickly you can develop something, 18 months and $1.2 million is dirt cheap. So the system that we have basically uses a video game engine. You guys can come up if you want. In this game engine, what I've done is I've loaded up the entire International Space Station model. This model is a super
Can you
complex.
tilt it down?
Sure, yeah, tilt the screen.
There you go.
Yeah.
So this is like a super complex model that they thought, you know what, a modern PC is not going to be able to show this, not at the level of detail that we want. So what are you going to do? And we said, okay, let's send over the federated source data, the actual model that you have, and we'll see what we can do. We'll turn off things that aren't necessarily imperative, like certain advanced lighting models that the game engine might have, certain physics portions of the physics engine, to just try to make it faster and faster and faster, so that any PC could run this thing. And they were like, okay, yeah, but it's not just PCs. We want it to work on Macs too. All right, so we went back to the engine and we're like, can we get this thing to run on a Mac? At that point, we realized it already ran on the Mac. It was already something that was multi-OS capable. And the original developers of this engine that we had licensed said, okay, if you guys really want to go crazy, it'll run on Linux too. So we went back to NASA and we said, all right, cool. Like, you want it to run on Macs? We'll run it on Macs and we'll run it on Linux. So now any operating system can run this, and you can have a machine that's 5 years old and it'll still work. So I'm just going to show you guys really quick. Like, you can kind of look around. I can fly around. I can look at the International Space Station. I can have a conversation online. Like, this supports multiple users, so multiple users can actually get into the system and start having a conversation. They can click on an object, and then suddenly that object has little points, defining, hey, this is what I'm talking about right now. And everybody else in the system sees it. It's just a video game. That's all it really is. And what we decided was, this is using a game engine, but this is not a game. That what this is a visualization system. So we started thinking along those lines for later projects. How can we really make what works for games work across other collaborative systems? And what we did was we had a client that came to us and they said, well, we have this prison, and the prison is 2 million square feet, and we have to somehow be able to walk around in this prison. So we were like, okay, how long do you need to possibly, how long do you need to get this thing online and out to your potential users? Because what they were doing was they had what's called a mock prison riot. They would get thousands of people to come across from around the world, 28 different countries, to fly in and use this prison as a mock prison riot. They would have, people trying to escape and correctional officers doing different exercises, rappelling down the side of the building, taking shields into different corridors, and they had an idea of what they wanted, and they didn't think that anybody could do it. And what we thought was, all right, all they're asking for really is a model of the prison inside a game engine. It's not any different than what you would play on an Xbox or on a PC. And so we went out there, we took data, we figured out a way to get that data into the game engine, and you can run around in it. And I've got that as an example too. The other thing I was thinking about, aside from all of this is stuff that is kind of user specific. There are other games that we don't often know that we're playing, but they're useful. And I just came out of a social media conversation. And one of the games that gets played in social media is, who's the first to know something? Who's the first who's the tech geek that gets to that data before everybody else does? Oh, I know about this product before you do by 6 hours. And those 6 hours really don't mean anything, but to the people trying to get that information. Bragging rights. For the people trying to get that information out, that's amazing. That oh my God, somehow this person has a 6 hour lead on everybody else.
Must be connected.
Connected, right? And there's actually like a triangle of users and how they disseminate data out. So you can kind of murmur to somebody, hey, this is what's going to come out, and it's kind of like it's a marketing game. But what I've been thinking about is, how do we get these games to actually be useful for science? One of the things that I sometimes use as an example is Google Images. Google Images has a game where you log in to Google Images. You can call it, I think it's called the Google Images mapping or something like that.
Labeler.
What is it?
Google Image Labeler.
Google Image Labeler.
I'm playing right now.
Okay,
Thank you.
it's so awesome. Google Image Labeler is really, really cool. I will pull up Google Image Labeler, so you guys can see it.
How do you describe
I'm
it?
pretty sure that actually came out of another project too. It was a private beta test where they were looking at whether people could agree on the label for the same
Correct.
image.
Right.
What else?
Part of it is that the engine that they have algorithmically searches text, and that it was text heavy. It wasn't a visualization kind of system.
Right.
So instead of sounds like or reads like, we could say looks like. Is that
Correct. It's like looks like. It's similar to that, but it's even more direct. So I put up a picture of the Mona Lisa, right? And you log into that system. Into them, that system, its alt tag in the system might be Lamborghini Diablo, right? It's not the Lamborghini Diablo. Clearly, it's the Mona Lisa.
So we got 120 points.
However, this is the game. You log in and I log in. We don't talk to one another. This is like almost like playing password. You see the Mona Lisa. You have to describe it, but you can't describe it saying Mona Lisa. So what would you say? Like if
a painting of a woman?
you can only use one word.
Oh,
Describe.
it's one word. The
One
rules are
word.
one word.
One word.
Da Vinci. Well,
Okay.
sorry, I mean whoever was the.
Right. Whoever painted it.
Yeah.
And so this, what this does is that when you match up, it may say female, right? Female may be a word, and that's a simple way to describe the Mona Lisa. Painting.
Oh, okay. There. Okay.
Right.
Trying to classify.
Hair. Caucasian.
Italian Renaissance.
Italian Renaissance.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 right? And what it's doing is it's giving you a point for every time you match randomly with the other word. And it refines that search. By then, the next person that plays can't use the words that you were able to match up.
Or cannot use them.
Cannot.
Because you want to find more.
Correct.
It's like taboo almost.
Oh, it's
Right.
but it's just a game. This is
Yeah.
a game for entertainment, or
No,
it's
this-
building the
Building the
rules.
rules.
It's building the rules.
Correct.
Yeah.
For them. Google has put it out as if it's a game.
Oh,
And it looks, this is an awesome game.
Yeah.
I'm blown like.
so where is the? I mean, I just don't know. But for a person who is not playing a game, if they were to say, "I want to search for Mona Lisa," would that actually play an effort in finding it out?
Yes, what it does is it goes back, it dumps that output from that game. in the words that we're able to more accurately describe what that is, because it's not a Lamborghini Diablo.
Right, and depending upon how many correlations there are,
Correct.
some will
It
become
weights-
it, and
correct.
it collects that and weights them.
Bingo.
It's gonna help you get better results on Google image search.
Okay.
Hopefully.
All right.
Correct.
We've been trying to convince the people at Goddard. I don't know if you know Astronomy Picture of the Day.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to tell the APOD folks that they should harness that, because annually we used to go through and categorize all 365 days of images based on what objects were in them and what they reflected. And this is hours of work from people, who have other things they should be doing.
Right.
Whereas that has millions of viewers each day, 11 mirrors around the world, several languages. And I said, why can't those users, when they see an image, choose emission nebula, choose sky view, choose all these things, and help us do it, so that once 5 or 10 people say that's what it is, we have a reasonable confidence it's
Right.
true.
Right. And that's really where I wanted to take this discussion, because we're getting to a point where, whether we like it or not, these metagames that are played, I am the first to this restaurant, is now a company. This is Foursquare, the way Foursquare works. I am checking into this cool, awesome restaurant, and you all know that now. So I'm the first one in there. But you know what? There might be another guy that goes there more often. So he's the mayor of that city, or whatever it might be. What's important is that they're using this data. Really, for them, it might be whether to sell a brand, or it might be to market to a certain demographic, that kind of thing. They're using it. Commercial entities have already realized the games are really important. Earning badges and whatever it might be that gets you points is important. Twitter, there's this meta game in Twitter. There's not so much a game as it is just part of the system. How many followers do I have, right? Is this successful because I have 1,000 followers, or because I have 15 retweets in a day? And a lot of people try to say that, okay, this isn't important at all. This isn't what we use Twitter for, but it is. Parts of it, realistically, are so you can have bragging rights and say this is a successful campaign. I have affected 3,000 people in one go. I've been able to get to all those people in one go. So to use this type of software, we kind of have to get over this feeling that fun doesn't equal work, right? And that's a tough one, because I don't know whether it's the society and the culture that we live in that has decided, okay, work means toil, and work means hardship, or work means sweat, right? But sweat can be fun too. You're still sweating it, but what you're doing is you're making it in such a way that you're sharing that workload and making it so that the public wants to play this game. And this game really is, how many galaxies did I identify? How many near-Earth objects was I able to label? Or, there's so many things you can do with this if you set it up correctly. One of the things that I personally didn't like about the way that the NASA MMO went down, the test, is it's an idea of the future, right? It's this possible future, 20 some odd years from now, 30 some odd years from now. Okay, so you're working on Mars, and you're essentially mining on Mars. I mean, somewhat. We're not getting anything realistic off of that. It may be a great marketing, a way to market to kids, but they get when things are authentic and when they're not. And if they look at that and they go, oh, awesome, what's the system that is currently being used right now that is going to be that in 30 years? And there's no real answer right now. We can't even say that we'll have a human being in space 10 years from now. How are we going to say that we're going to totally own the moon, 20, 30 years from now? And I think it's disingenuous to release something that is, okay, this is the best game ever. You're going to love it because it's NASA and it's cool. And it doesn't generate anything. It doesn't generate an authentic feeling of, wow, I actually am communicating directly with NASA. I'm not. When I pull that game, or my kid brother pulls that game, or my kid sister pulls that game, they're communicating with somebody else in the community. Somebody that has to be a game player to even know that that game exists.
Well, you say communicating, but I also say contributing, like you said.
Contributing.
Yeah,
Right.
not only communicating, but you're also contributing in some way.
Right.
Or, yeah.
The other thing too is that we think of like these huge complex systems that we have to build. This game has to be photorealistic, has to support 512 users at the same time, has to run on Mac and PC and Linux just so we don't get yelled at. It's gotta, it's gotta run on the lowest possible system and still look photorealistic. It's like these things hold us up. What's the cost on this? I think it's gonna be like 20 million. Okay, so you back it up. You go back. Katamari Damacy, right? Voted 2008 Game of the Year. Is a series of blocks, colored blocks that are shaped kind of like real world objects. And you're a little guy rolling a ball over them in Katamari. And it sounds like such a ridiculous premise, but this game, people went bananas over. The music was right, the feeling was right, the color was right, and it had the right attitude. It had an attitude that was, this is the kookiest thing you'll play, but you're gonna play it all the time. And it's okay for us to address certain scientific problems with that attitude as long as the data is correct. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see this move toward edutainment that makes the data worthless. Because then, again, you're back to, okay, everybody's playing it, but it's not contributing any kind of worthwhile data back.
In the particular graphic simulation environment that you just showed, space station, are the objects, can they be real-time objects?
They can be real-time objects. What feeds the system, what makes it valuable is that it grabs essentially an XML file, a telemetry stream of the object that describes images on that object that are tied to that XML object. It describes text, positional data, time, it's got timestamp, and all of it is fed through a federated source. NASA owns the back end of this. Okay. It owns all that data, and we don't modify that. Our purpose there is not to run a physics test against something or a lighting model against something. Our job is to deliver it to engineers so engineers can pull up anything and see it immediately. That's what's important to them. They want to be able to see that data in front of them in such a way that it just isn't just a spreadsheet of numbers. They want to be able to say, oh man, like, yeah, within this system, these tolerances work, but that really sucks. Like that is not going to be a comfortable environment, or that's not going to work well. Or if it falls apart on a certain simulation, where do we see it start to act irregular? Yeah, we can look at it in the telemetry stream as numbers, but really to be able to visualize it and look at it and see the plume get weird, and then the ship start to just wobble or do something irregular, that has a lot of value. There's something to be said about visual communication, not just this textual kind of list of data. Let me see. I wanted to show you guys.
So while you're pulling that up, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
We do at NASA some data in the classroom projects, so we put out data sets from various missions, and we give people tools to access the data. And I think for a lot of users that's somewhat lackluster because it's just some tool interface and it puts out some light curves and some whatever. And I've been interested in trying the aspect of making it a problem-solving activity, possibly even a game. Mm-hmm. The question I have is actually, how do I find someone to work with me on that?
Well, the commercial aspect of that is that there are a lot of capable companies. Mm-hmm. One of the issues that you'll run into immediately as you start to look is that they make a lot more money investing in R&D that will produce a blockbuster game that has revenues of $100 million
right.
than of winning a contract from you that might be worth half a billion or 2 million. Numbers that are exponentially larger when they go commercial with that. One of the things you might want to think about is how can the data that you're trying to get looked at How can that process possibly help them commercially?
Okay.
Right? So if they have R&D that is about identifying that they're heavily invested in, that's identifying data of a certain type, and you can go to them and say, I have this other type of data. Will this have any value in the engine that you're creating or in the system that you're implementing? You're more likely to get them to go, oh my God, will you give us that data? Because then we'll process it for you. The trick there, though, is to, again, make sure that the data that they're spitting back is real. And of course, you're going to have to look at that and be there to get that. You don't necessarily have to understand the inner workings of the engine, but you know the output is really of value there.
I have a question that has to start off with a smaller question. Is any part of your current work available to the academic industry? And subsequently, if that is so, I recently had a very interesting and difficult collaboration between George Washington University, two departments, University of Southern California, United States Naval Academy, Princeton University, and University of Maryland. We all tried to get together to design a space mission. And lots of emails and lots of MS Word revisions later, and lots of diagrams to be sent back and forth and arguments over the telephone. It took me, 4 weeks to come to the point where a design took shape, that this is what we wanted to do. Now, if you're proposing, I think this is the first time I'm ever hearing a collaborative modeling environment, where individual engineering teams or research teams are able to visualize the same object, or say my spacecraft has 3 wings, your spacecraft has 2 solar panels, and mine has a thruster, or perhaps we're the thruster people at GW. We're saying that we want to put the thruster here, and here's the plume effect, and they'll say, no, you can't do it because our instrument and sensor payload is going to be like this. That's an amazing discussion. I wish we had utilization of that tool. But is any of your product actually available for academia?
Well, we'd have to talk about how you would use it, and I mean, what we would love is the concept here. The larger concept is the synthetic classroom. Really is the virtualization to visualization of any kind of data source. In order to make that jump, I was watching what was coming out of NASA IT, the NASA IT conference, was it a week ago? One of the things that they were saying about virtual worlds was there needs to be standardization before we can get to that open system. So there are a lot of different proprietary systems. There's like Second Life, and like Sun has developed its own in-house version of it.
Vast Park is one of them. Vast Park is
Vast
one
Park.
of them. Project Wonderland is another.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are all these different proprietary systems. Where we want to get to is a place that, so let's say you have a classroom, and that classroom can only afford X number of scientific experiments, right? Real hard scientific experiments that the kids can do. There shouldn't be a reason that can't be augmented, not necessarily replaced just yet, but augmented with all these things that you couldn't possibly do inside of a classroom. So like you're saying, okay kids, here are all the components, here are all the real world components that exist to create one possible mission. Go at it. And they, like the Matrix, say, I want 4 of these, I want 6 of these, I want 2 of these, and a couple of robots. And they start to put things together.
In a collaborative manner.
In a collaborative manner. This is the kind of thing that we saw in the Lego competition that happened, adults versus kids, right? The adults, we built one big thing that looked exactly like the space shuttle.
Well,
They-
not exactly.
Slightly.
It was
Close.
it was as close as we could get, and that hit us. Later. Yeah, it was awesome. It looks just like it. This is we joked that this thing it looked like one of the transporters in Pandora. Like in Avatar, and then it hits me after a while. I'm like, I wonder what we got this handle. We're gonna crush these kids, and I look over, and the kids have like 6 different robots that make no sense whatsoever. It's a sled arm robot. It's a robot that digs dirt thing. And to me, as adults, we look at this and we're like, that's ridiculous. But it's not. these are the kind of things that we want to see.
If you have a finite amount of resources, you want to like have multiple machines to do multiple functions, whereas in your particular case, your design was like for a singular focus, you know,
Right.
say transport or whatever.
Right, and really what they were saying was, in a way, they were looking at it as good enough tech, right? I'm gonna mash up whatever components I have here, whatever Lego pieces I have here to make whatever I want. I'm not limited to your budget is, or these, you cannot have fun within these, you can only have fun within these constraints. They were willing to push that limit. And if we can get these kids these tools, we can get engineers these tools, and say, you know what, don't worry about it. Don't worry about blowing this thing up. Or if you do it in here. Like, blow it up 1,000,000 times in there. And that's part of what we do. There's a fantastic modification to the source game engine called Gary's Mod. And Gary's Mod, the military has already looked at Gary's Mod. Gary's Mod, what it did was, it didn't create a game. It created a platform, basically a physics game. It used all the physics rules that already existed. And what this guy did, he said, I'm going to get all the objects that are available to you in that world, and I'm going to create something like the Matrix White Room, and I'm going to let you make the game. And you see these servers that are set up for Gary's Mod, and you have no clue what you're stepping into. Some guy might be building a car, some lady might be building a spaceship. I walked into one, and this guy was building a cathedral, like pane at a time, like one pane of glass at a time. And he had a little sign set up that was, if you want to help build, grab a pane. If you don't, please watch, but don't destroy. And this guy, I mean, he probably have been at this for days, if not weeks, and there are other people helping him out. Like, there are like 6 other people floating around and kind of sticking the panes on there to finish this cathedral. One analogy I've heard is that the spaceships that we build now are our cathedrals, right, in history, the legacies that we leave. So if the spaceships are our cathedral, and we can get the public to build their own cathedrals on their own time, can't we use them to build spaceships? I mean, that's the jump that I'm making. That's like, can't we get them in with the engineers maybe?
Well, I'm a current generation. I'm a late generation educator in this field. I'm coming up with my own innovative ideas to do whatever version of broadband deep space networks. In order for me to convince everybody else, I've been told that you can write all the papers you want, but include a nice little graphic.
Always.
You know, yeah. I said, but it's difficult because I've got Earth, Mars, and half the rest of the universe in between. So STK was my temporary choice, you know, where we had to model something, and it's going to be published soon. But to really build such a system with micropropulsion technology that Decatur has, the scale of the micropropulsion devices are going to be this small compared to the rest of the spacecraft, which is going to be this big, and then we're going to be flying all around the whole place in order to get to where we want to go to. So it's going to be a challenge to just visualize this, and most groups of engineers who are agreeing to help me, or the faculty who are going to sign up to do this, they're having difficulty in visualizing a 50 to 100 year mission. You know, how it's going to actually work. All the elements are there, but we just probably don't all read from the same page. Everybody's looking at it from just a subsystem level block diagram page. They don't know how everything is going to fit together. How are the antenna people going to ever agree on the spacecraft bus and the power and all that sort of stuff? Right. It's similar to what you're what you described.
And one of the things that we're contemplating too is the creation of your own objects. So just like Legos, you have these components that equal X object. But in video games, oftentimes in role-playing games, you have 2 different things. One might be the green herb, and one might be the red herb. But when you combine these 2, suddenly you've got something that makes you move faster and live longer in the game. What we want to do is take that and apply it to these science questions as well. These 2 components might be better put together, but we don't know that. Here are the Lego blocks. Go at it. Go ahead and break and make the goofiest robot sled thing that you've ever made. But if it works, it works. Who cares what it looks like and whether in the beginning it makes sense? And does it make sense to crash an object onto the surface of the moon to measure for water? Like, if you think about that, like, that sounds crazy, but yeah, it actually does. Like, it actually does. So what essentially what I wanted to talk about was being able to create these systems and apply game, not necessarily just game theory, but the way games are created to that, to solve these problems, to solve not just engineering problems, but maybe social problems, maybe ways that apply to one of the talks that I had yesterday, which was how do we communicate to minorities? Maybe this is one way to communicate to minorities. There's no language here. This is fun. The language is fun. It doesn't matter what color you are or what language you speak. If you got a room of kids from 100 different countries and you dump some Legos in front of them, they're all going to jump in and they're going to make whatever they want to make. That's a whole new way to communicate, right? If you have engineers that don't necessarily speak,
they would have their own innate ability to grasp concepts. I mean, it doesn't require language. It just requires basically an innate understanding of what the purpose is. They'll figure it out.
Right.
Trial and error method, but they will figure it out.
Right. And it would be useful to have coaches in this system. I mean, it's for our generation, it's a little out of bounds to take a system that essentially looks like a game and try to make science from it. It's hard enough trying to tell someone, no, I don't make games. I mean, because people say, oh, you make video games, and I said, I work with video games. I work with video game engines, but I don't really make games. Other companies make Mythic makes games, EA makes games. I make science. I try to make science. My coworkers try to answer questions like that. So I'm going to pull up Gary's mod, actually, is what I'm going to do. You guys can see the craziness that is Gary's mod.
Well, Gary's mod makes me think about some of the things we really hope to get a Second Life. When NASA started getting into Second Life, one of the big goals was being able to have people see things and experience things. So like the James Webb Space Telescope is the size of a tennis court. It's very hard to convey that without trotting out the full-scale model, which is awesome, but not feasible for a number of reasons to bring out. But if we could build it in game to scale, and we had a fan that volunteered to do things like that. I mean, when we wanted those things, and it wasn't a perfect situation, but all of a sudden we could send somewhere to go look at something. We send someone to go look at something somewhere that actually conveyed that information, so that they could actually visualize how something came together.
One of the things you might want to consider too is that you don't have to. I started going on one place and I went on a tangent, which was this big monolithic system, right? Let's say you have the James Webb Telescope. Let's say you have a model of it, right, in Maya or whatever other system it's in, Softimage or Lightwave or something.
I don't know what's in, but yeah.
Okay. So it's a 3D model. Just to get it to the modding community with maybe a little README, not even a little README, you could have a huge tome text file and say models for gamers, right? And that model is then converted into a format for the source engine, for Torque, for Rage, for Tech5 at ID, all these different engines. And you get it to them that way. Hey, we don't even have to build a game, have fun. Then you jump over that limitation that is, NASA doesn't build games where we shoot aliens. NASA doesn't build games where we blow stuff up. You're not. What you're doing is you're letting the community have resources that are already theirs. These models belong to the United States, right? They're built by NASA. Most of them, if there aren't security issues, are public domain.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have a model file, and you have the textures. I mean, they're going to go nuts. Just to get a copy of the space shuttle into Gary's mod, it took me like 2 days to find one that even made sense. People, tear it apart and reconfigure it and do all kinds of crazy stuff that they're going to do because it's in a game. But I want to put thrusters on the thing, and I want to see how fast I can get it to break certain levels or whatever. Yeah. And just that will get you total street cred. I mean, just some idea that, wow, they actually get it. Like, they don't have to build a game. We can build a game if they give us the parts.
Which I'll on Monday call up the person that does public affairs for JWST, and because that's something, if they have it, I'm sure they'd be interested.
Right, and you can tweet that out. Hey gamers, like, here's a new model. If you want to get it into this thing, you don't even have to describe it. We converted it as best as we could. Here's the source file. If you want to do a better job, contact us, and we'll use your model instead, or whatever. I mean, to jump through those hoops.
Do we have a fair treatment clause that no, you can't, blow things up if it's a space shuttle and cause?
I don't think, if you're not making it,
I mean, I'm curious.
well, I mean, that's going to come down to your PR people or your
I mean,
public relations people, right?
For the most part, stuff gets out there and there's not a lot of control over how it's used. I mean, if someone wants to visualize unfortunate things,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there's some.
I mean, I'm just only saying that, full disclosure, my kid of 8 years old has a habit of taking flight simulator games that I give to him over the internet. And the first thing he does is like go up and fly around, and he knows how to fly very well, but then he goes and actually smashes it into a mountain just
But
for special effects.
that's the point, right?
I mean, he is very good at that.
Right,
And then I have to like
When
convince him, look, I'll pay you money to go and try to land at the airport. So it's like,
But I was the kid who would play these video games, and if there was a barrel in the room I thought I could smash to get
Really?
the prize out of it, you smash all the barrels. you keep smashing.
I mean,
it.
is it positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement? I mean, who knows what, but
But it's exploration.
Right.
I mean, for me, I take something like James Webb and I see it as it is the future. It has some pretty incredible, unbelievable tech on it. And if people want to troubleshoot that or look at that more closely or imagine other ways it could work, that's actually valuable engineering that's going on.
Yeah. I can contribute even the latest I mean, actually, I have to do this in the next, probably next 2-year cycle or so as I'm developing the thruster and the thruster array and the control systems. Ultimately, for my sanity, I'm going to have a visualization program somewhere, because if it's on the spacecraft floating around, I won't know what it's going to do. I just need to see it, just to feel comfort that yes, I'm thrusting plasma. So, or even have a sensor that will just show how much.
Right.
I mean, if you guys later come back to this campus and you want to look at the plasma thruster we have, I mean, you have to look at it in a vacuum chamber in the dark, because the plasma is deep blue or ultraviolet blue. So it looks beautiful when it actually operates very well.
And imagine just that access, right? Like there are systems at NASA that can't be shown for either for security reasons or for safety standards. But if you can get that system, hey guys, we built a little module in Gary's mod that is standing underneath the space shuttle, or standing under some other test system, whether it's Ares rocket, or maybe SpaceX wants to release something that shows that visualization. It's not necessarily game, but just having that, just being able to say, fire it up, like, do it, boom, and the thing is rocketing.
Actually, the situation I just described is very important from both the practical point and a scientific point, because we need to know the contamination that happens, because the plume is going to exit out the back, and we need to actually plot it out anyway. So if we could see what we're doing, but because the sensors are going to measure everything, but when we effectively see it, we don't want to see numbers. We just want to see full graphics, so that we know how tight of a clearance we have.
So some of the limitations that you run into games, though, are that the physics model is not.
No, we would actually stream telemetry with the probes.
Got it.
So we're going
So maybe it's just volumetric data.
right. We wouldn't actually have the game produce the data.
Right.
We would pre-process that, and ultimately on the telemetry side of the ground station, we would actually be able to do it. But ultimately, we have to see it. If we're turning left, right, whatever. It's just a start. But nowhere in CubeSat history or nowhere in small satellite history has any attention been given to the fact that now you can put engines on these birds. So this is the new generation. We're going to put them on there and fly to deep space. Who knows?
Right.
So that's why I'm all the more interested to kind of get to use that.
One of the things that I did, and unfortunately I'm not sure why it's not working the way I wanted to, but so I got the model of the space shuttle, and I was in a meeting at NASA headquarters, and I showed them that, and they were like, "Oh, that's very cool." And then I picked it up, and then I moved it, and it's to scale, so I moved it, and then I tagged it with some thrusters, and the thrusters were bound to the numbers on my keyboard. So I put the thrusters however I wanted it to move, and then I let it drop out of the sky. So this thing has mass in the game, so this giant space shuttle's falling, and I hit the thruster and it just rockets around. And I can't tell you the amount of fun I had the night before practicing to get it right. So I had to do this thing like 100 times, and my wife comes downstairs. She's like, "Oh my God, are you still playing with the space shuttle?" And I was like, "Yes, but I finally got it. So it'll go around, and then I can actually land the thing." It's just like
And the NASA people are going like, "This is cool."
flipping out. They're looking at it like, "Oh my God, this is like the real deal. This looks so cool." And it it builds this excitement. Oh my God, we can actually share this and make it be awesome, because it is awesome.
Yeah, the wings basically don't do anything much.
It's a glider.
Yeah,
Right.
it's just that they could have just put an air breathing engine, pop out and just do that like that.
Well, I'm not going to tell them that the design was no good. I'm just
Well,
going to show. I'm just going to show them.
I'm going to
something
tell them.
that's
I mean, I
fun.
can tell them from not only them. It's just stuff, whatever.
All right. Well, thanks guys for coming.
Thank you.
Hope that gave you some ideas. So. Thanks.
Don't be leaving. I want you guys to sign my shirt. Not this shirt that I'm wearing.
Hey, are you like working in confidential sectors or working in civilian? You should work with.
I do
remember
remember that.
Well, we do confidential, but there's definitely data that I can't talk about that.
Compared with the